స్పీకర్ లోనే ఉంది. స్పీకర్ లోనే ఉంది.
Sir, shall we start, sir?
Yes, sir. So, Sunil, please proceed, sir.
Thank you, sir. Respected convener of this faculty development program, Dr. P. Kiran Sri Garu, my dear faculty colleagues and participants, and today's resource person, Dr. Subhedar. Good afternoon, one and all. We, the Department of CSC, Sri Vishnu Engineering College for Women, Bhimavaram, we welcome you all for the second day of 1 week national level online faculty development program on recent trends in artificial intelligence and cyber security. Now, I would like to invite Dr. DrMansiSubhedar. Madam, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Ma'am, first of all, let us convey our thanks to you, ma'am, because in your busy schedule, you joined with us to share your valuable insights. Before I enter into the session, let me take the privilege to introduce you, ma'am. It is my great honor to introduce Dr. DrMansiSubhedar. Dr. DrMansiSubhedar completed BE in ETC, ME in Electronics Engineering, and PhD in Electronics Engineering. She has more than 17 years of teaching experience. She is currently working as IQSC coordinator and head at the Department of Electronics and Computer Science at Pillai HOC College of Engineering and Technology, Rasiani, Maharashtra. She is Vice President IIC PHCET and has completed foundation level and advanced level training for Innovation Ambassador. She has published 43 papers in peer-reviewed international journals and conferences. She has reviewed more than 850 citations for her research work to date. She is also a reviewer for international journal Elsevier, Springer, Tyler, and Francis, etc., and conferences of repute. She was a reviewer and a technical committee member of 10 reputed conferences under IEEE and Springer. She has received a research grant for 3 research projects for the University of Mumbai. She has also filed 4 patents and is a life member of ISTE, IETE, IE, IEEE, and CSI. She has served as Honorable Secretary for IETE Navi Mumbai Center and is currently an executive committee member till 2024. She has been elevated to IEEE senior grade, a prestigious recognition, and is appointed as a member Women Empowerment Committee in IEEE Bombay section Women in Engineering. Her research interests include signal processing, cybersecurity, IoT, data science, and next generation networks. Ma'am, really, it gives us an immense pleasure to have such a great person as a resource person to this faculty development program. No? Ma'am, now I request you to share your valuable insights in cyber threats and corrective measures for IoT security. Ma'am, now the platform is yours.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for giving the introduction. I would like to thank Dr. Kiran Sri, sir, for inviting me to share my views on this topic in this 1 week national level FDP program. I thank all the management representatives and the entire team who has taken a lot of efforts to organize this faculty development program, which is the need of hour. And the topic itself is very interesting. That is recent trends in artificial intelligence and cyber security, where lot of opportunities are available for research. For there is some disturbance here. Can you mute the other participants so that it will be easy for us?
Please unmute yourself now, please.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. So as I said, the topic itself is very interesting and has a lot of scope and potential for working on all the subdomains, both in AI and cybersecurity. So good evening to all the participants here. Today I'll be delivering a session on cyber threats and corrective measures for IoT security. Let me share my presentation. So just let me know if my screen is clearly visible.
Yes, ma'am, it is visible.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. So the topic for today's discussion is cyber threats and corrective measures for IoT security. I'm sure since the participants here are from computer IT and might be from the allied domains, we all are aware of these key terms, at least, that is cybersecurity or IoT, etc. Due to the limitation of time, I have made the presentation very crisp. There are n number of things that can be included and we may discuss upon it some other day. But today's discussion will be focused only on these basically points. We'll discuss in brief about the evolution of IoT, that is Internet of Things, a little introduction, characteristics, and the architecture. We will discuss few applications in IoT. Directly going to the security threats and the corrective measures will not be sufficient, because unless we know what all applications are there, what sort of data is included, and what are the basic components required in this service domain, then only we will get a clear idea about security threats and all. So that is the reason I have included few introductory points here about IoT. So IoT, Internet of Things, how this concept evolved, you can look at the diagram. Initially, the era was before pre-internet. It was for human-to-human communication. Either it can be the simplex, half duplex or full duplex type of communication. For example, with the help of pagers or cordless phones or the mobile phones, we used to communicate from one person to another person from anywhere at any instant of time. To this pre-internet era, the smart networks were added, and then we got the Internet of Content, which we call it as a WWW, World Wide Web, where we could transfer lot of information related to all the domains through email. And it got quite famous because it was very easy to send and deliver n number of things from any point of the world at any other point. When we add some excellent IT platforms and services to this Internet of Content, then what was evolved is the Internet of Services. So initially it started with the basic internet, that is World Wide Web, and gradually few hardware, software upgradations were done, and then ultimately the IoT is evolved. In Internet of Services, that is Web 2.0, we all know the e-commerce concept, where we have business to business, business to consumer, consumer to business, government to consumer, and n number of such broad categories. The examples include all online shopping platforms, which are quite famous nowadays, like Amazon, Flipkart, etc., and many more. So this era also got very famous. When we added the smartphone concept to this era, because everybody was not equipped with the desktops or the laptops computers all the time, 24 hours. Then people wanted to have all these facilities available on their smartphones. And then what came is Internet of People. Doing all these transactions, whether it is online banking or selling goods or buying something or communicating or doing office work and n number of other things. Apart from that, simply an entertainment or communicating with the friends and family, which includes the social media. So that era is Internet of People, where we had smartphones and other applications. And then it got evolved to Internet of Things, where it is a machine-to-machine communication. Not only the human intervention is required, the machines are so smart that they can communicate with each other. And the examples are n number of automation applications. If we see the IoT landscape, this entire diagram itself is a huge landscape, we can say. On each of the subblocks, we can have a discussion of 2 hours, because this is in so depth with respect to software, with respect to hardware, and with respect to n number of other technical aspects. The applications of IoT include in the personal domain. Examples are wearables, smart watches, etc., as we know. Then even people use it for their fitness, for trackers, for health monitoring, for entertainment purpose, even in the sports, toys, and many other domains. When it comes to automation examples, the automation which can be for home, which can be for industry, which can be for other sectors, all these things are relying on Internet of Things. When it comes to vehicles also, we can see smart vehicles, smart bicycles, smart four-wheelers, and they mostly are made automated. Like we can get n number of parameters on the screen readily available. We can get the alerts, we can get automated messages, we can work perfectly without touching even the screen. When it comes to enterprise, it can be a retail sector, it can be a smart office, or even the farmers are using nowadays the IoT based devices for farming, and IoT has got a large scope in the agriculture field also. So this diagram tells us how vast is the scope of IoT, and that is why it is important to know how IoT works and what can go wrong in the IoT application. So the main motto of today's session is how IoT works and which are the threats to this IoT application. Because unknowingly, we all use IoT applications on a daily basis. So let us see first what is the Internet of Things. When we say the word things here, it means there are n number of devices, which can be sensors or it can be some other smart devices. They all are connected to the internet, and hence the term is Internet of Things. So basically, it enables the communication between all the applications that we want to communicate with. As I said, examples are wearable watches, alarm clocks, and many more. So the basic functionality of IoT includes sensing, computing, and then communication. We have the sensors and the actuators which gather the data, they pass it through gateways, and then the end user application runs on those data collected. Obviously, in between, we have data processing, analyzing, and accordingly the decision making. What are the different characteristics of IoT? Why it has got so much attention? Why it is becoming famous? So the foremost important characteristic is intelligence. With the help of combination of algorithms, software, and hardware, these IoT applications are smart enough. The meaning of the term smart enough is they can respond in an intelligent way to a particular situation. With the help of sensors, we can gather the data, but processing of data and responding according to that data is what crucial is, because the applications are automated. They cannot wait for a human to analyze and respond. So these all applications, they are intelligent and hence they are gaining attention. Connectivity, it helps us to remain connected it is obviously compatible with n number of things, and connectivity is the major characteristic of IoT. These IoT devices, they are dynamic in nature. For example, for some point of time they can operate, which we call it as a waking time, and for some point of time they can remain idle, which we can call it as a sleeping time. A simple example can be, suppose I need to gather the data at suppose 4 o'clock in the morning every day, and apart from that I don't need a data from that particular device. So before 4 o'clock the device can wake up, can provide me the values at that instant of time, and for all other time it can remain in a sleep mode so as to save the power consumption, so as to save the battery. The other important feature is these number of devices, they can also change dynamically. Okay, for example, we can say scalability. Scalability is one more important characteristics of IoT. We can have these number of devices in n number, and they all can communicate with each other. So the management of data which is generated from these thousands or lakhs of devices and their interpretation is critical, because when it comes to 10 to 15 sensors, it is fine. But when there are thousands of sensors, they are sensing the data and the data is getting generated for every minute, suppose, then we have a huge amount of data. But obviously a layman cannot understand anything from that thousands of readings. The interpretation is what crucial is, and that is achieved using IoT. Other important characteristic is sensing. We can say the heart of IoT device is a sensor, because the basic starting point of any IoT application is to sense the parameter. So these sensors, they detect or measure any changes in the environment. You name a parameter and the sensors are available. Usually our students use normal sensors like temperature, pressure, humidity, motion, acceleration, etc. But apart from these traditional physical parameters, there are thousands of other parameters which are available, and the sensors, rather smart sensors, are available. So the smart sensors have inbuilt data processing capacity, and nowadays smart sensors is also another research domain available for all of us. Next characteristics is heterogeneity. So when we say the word heterogeneous, the meaning is there are n number of different networks involved. That means their architecture, the way they work, their protocol stack will be different. But the compatibility between all these devices or the networks, the extensibility is what achieved using IoT. So that is the special characteristic, because whenever the new application or the new concept is evolved, we cannot abolish all the existing applications. This new thing should be backward compatible with the existing systems. So that is again the benefit of IoT, that it can support connectivity between the different types of heterogeneous networks. The next characteristics is security. Whenever it comes to communication, we all know that security threats are possible, because the era is of wireless communication, where there are n number of entry points available for the attacker to intercept the data, to intercept the communication, and float attack so that he can gain access to the network. So security is again major concern, which we are going to obviously talk in upcoming slides. So after looking at the IoT characteristics, these are the four main components on which any IoT device works. Obviously, these are basic minimum required entities. As per the complexity of the application, few more additional parts will also be there. So as I said, the first is sensors to collect the data. Second important component is connectivity, because whatever data is sensed, it will not be processed at the sensor unit. For processing it, obviously it needs to be sent to the main node, or we can say it can be sent to the cloud. So as per the application, as per the range involved, we have n number of communication models, right, from Bluetooth to Wi-Fi to Zigbee to many other options available. Then once the data is received, the important thing is data processing, that is making data useful. As I said, suppose we have a temperature monitoring system or a weather forecasting system, which collects the weather details from all over last 15 years. So there might be lakhs of readings available, which are taken from various sensors. But what a person should understand from those readings? Nothing. We have to process that data. We have to gain some important insights from that data by obviously using some data processing techniques. Nowadays, with the help of Python, it has become very easy to draw the graphs and to analyze the patterns and get the important insights. So making data useful is the key step at the IoT device, because if the important insights are not able to be drawn, we cannot provide a satisfactory performance to the end user. And once the data is made useful, once the decisions are ready, then we can communicate it to the user interface so that the user will respond accordingly, whatever is the insight drawn from the data processing unit. So these are the four main key steps of the IoT framework. Let us see in brief IoT architecture. We all are very much aware of the traditional OSI model, a 7-layer model, which we all have studied and we all teach also in various classes. So right from the physical layer to the application layer, 7-layer working. So in case of IoT, at the first layer, that is the physical devices, we have the component which we call it as a things. In Internet of Things, these things corresponds to the sensors, the devices, the machines which are there in any application. And then comes the connectivity, comes the accumulation of the data, aggregation of the data, processing of the data, analytics, and then communicating it to the ultimate business. So there are n number of studies available on IoT architecture. If you go through some research papers, there are two different ways the IoT architecture is mainly drawn. Look at the diagram in A and B. Some of the researchers plot it as per 3 layers, that is perception layer, network layer, and application layer. And the others have the approach of putting the IoT architecture in 5 layers, that is perception, transport, processing, application, and the business layer. But more or less, the working is more exactly same as per the OSI model. So the physical layer, which we call it as, here is labeled as a perception layer, which is for the sensors. So the sensors, the actuators, the machines, all those things will be at the physical layer. As the name suggests, it will sense the data from all the objects required. It will gather the information for whatever environment it is designed for, and it will pass on these gathered values. So that is at the perception layer. Network layer, as we all know, it is responsible for connecting to the network and the servers. So it will transmit the data, and at the other end, the data will be processed. And application layer corresponds to the end user application, the actual user interface which is using the IoT application. In the second diagram, where there were 2 additional layers called as transport layer and the processing layer, because that diagram had 5 layers. Okay, so the meaning of other 3 layers is exactly same as there in the last slide. The only 2 layers which were different are transport layer and the processing layer. So transport layer, it will transfer the data from the physical layer to the processing layer. As I said, as per the communication range, as per the distance between the 2 end entities, the communication models can be used, include Bluetooth, RFID, NFC, that is near field communication, LAN, and the recent even 3G and 4G communication technologies. Middleware layer is important because middleware layer is responsible for storing and analyzing the data. If the functioning of the middleware layer goes wrong, the IoT application cannot work efficiently, and there will not be the satisfactory feedback from the end user. So the processing layer, it stores, analyzes, and processes the huge amount of data. As I said, there will be the data sensed for each minute or each second as per the requirement. So this raw data is of no use. So processed data will be made available at the output of this middleware layer. So whatever is the application, whatever is the service domain of IoT, the main entities, or we can say the main technology behind IoT is hardware, which has various types of controllers. We all are very much aware of Arduino, Raspberry Pi, ARM processors, Cortex, many versions are available. Then we have IDEs, which are used for as a firmware and APIs. Then the protocols, the IoT protocols, which are very useful and famous, includes MQTT, HTTP, COAP, etc. Then the communication technologies like UWB, Zigbee, Bluetooth, as per the range. Then the network backbone, that is IPv4 or IPv6. Obviously, for IoT, the important backbone is 6LoWPAN, so low power wireless personal access network. And then the data centers and the cloud platforms. Even we can have a different complete discussion on the cloud platforms, because there are at least 10 to 12 major famous cloud platforms which are used by the researchers. They have their own features, and each is providing some or other benefit over other. And then the machine learning algorithms, which nowadays plays important role for processing, security, etc. What are the different applications of IoT? I'm sure that most of us have looked at these IoT applications. So we won't spend much time on this, but just we can go through it once. The first application is implantable glucose monitoring system. So for the diabetic patients, we all know that we need to monitor the glucose levels, and if they are too low or too high, as per that, the medicine prescription can be modified. So the sensors can be implanted below the skin, and continuously these glucose levels can be monitored. So this is an application in healthcare. Another application which is nowadays got famous is the wearable to fight depression. So the Apple has designed an app which monitors various parameters for an individual and can take care of how is his mental health, and accordingly his medicines can be prescribed, or accordingly his care can be taken, accordingly his family members can be informed, and all those other things. Other application include the medical alert systems. So they are specifically meant for the physically handicapped people, or even we can say mentally retarded people, or even we can use them for teenagers, when even the children, when they are alone at home, or when the elderly people are alone at home, family members can use these medical alert systems to send notifications to the family and friends to inform about the emergencies, like falling out of a bed in the middle of the night. So these medical alert systems, they are available in various forms. Some people don't want others to know that they are wearing a medical alert system. So for them, they are even available in the form of bracelets or necklace, or the traditional box type shape medical alert systems. Some of the other systems include the activity trackers for cancer treatment and the heart monitors. So activity trackers basically help to know the patient movements, fatigue levels, appetite, etc. Usually what happens, some of the patients are not able to tell clearly what are the symptoms, or what are the difficulties they face when they are at home, or when they are not in the hospital. So then their course of medication may go wrong. So if there are sensors which are continuously tracking them, then looking at all these entries, they can get a better prescription from the doctor, and the doctor will get better idea of what all problems they face when they are not available in front of a doctor. So even for the prior to treatment or after treatment, these sensors help them for a data collection. Heart monitors, they can monitor heart rates during checkups, during other activities. So these wearables are quite famous nowadays. And even there are systems now with the patients that if their heart rate is exceeding, or if there is certain emergency, the setting is directly made so that the ambulance can be called directly if the condition goes wrong. So obviously it is questioning somebody's life. So these applications are gaining attention in the healthcare industry. Not only sensors put on the body or embedded into the skin, but also now the sensors are available which can be swallowed like pills. They will remain there in the patient's body and they will keep on sending data which can be monitored over the patient's mobile app, and accordingly his medication can be altered, accordingly his doses of medicines can be altered and other things. So ingestible sensors is again I can say a good research topic for all of us, because it requires the knowledge of both hardware as well as software. So these were the applications in the healthcare sector. Apart from these, location services, remote monitoring. So if you have a huge hospital of suppose 10 floors or 15 floors, then some of the instruments like wheelchairs or nebulizers or pumps, etc., where they are kept, where they are readily available in case of emergency, that also can be traced by putting the IoT sensors on them, and they can easily be located and can be made available instantly. So all these are the applications in the healthcare. When it comes to agriculture, precision farming, livestock monitoring. Precision farming is including some or more parameters, maybe giving the water, changing the fertilizers ratio, or taking some other cares that can be done as per the values observed by sensors. So that is a precision farming. Livestock monitoring, when we have the cattle number very, very huge, then they can be tagged with the RFID tags so that we can trace where they are moving here and there. Smart greenhouse, we all are aware of it. Agricultural drones for spraying fertilizers, for spraying other chemicals, for monitoring the crop health, all those things, and monitoring the climatic conditions so that farmers can be ready to act accordingly if there is any issue in the weather. So why IoT is used in the agriculture is there are n number of things. First of all, less consumption of water and energy. If the sensors tell you that water is required or not required, appropriately the role can be decided. It reduces the operation cost because a single farmer can operate over many acres of land. Then low usage of chemicals. If the existing chemical content is identified in the soil, then we can save money on spraying of additional chemicals. We can get better food quality because crop monitoring is important nowadays for import export both ways. So everybody is asking for organic farming or excellent food quality, and people are ready to pay thousands of rupees extra to get better food. So food quality is a major concern. And monitoring of farms from anywhere. They don't need to rely and they don't need to be available in the farm all the time. They can sit at home comfortably and they can get the readings on the app for their water content, or soil health, or many other important parameters. Okay, so this is why IoT is used in the agriculture. When it comes to smart city, we all are aware, like right from the traffic management to smart transportation to smart buildings, home automation, then many such applications are there. We have seen many of the students, B as well as ME students, doing projects on this. And all these things are gaining attention because of perfection, because of automation, and because of easy way of handling it. So there are n number of such applications. Now, when we know all these are applications readily available, you might have felt that we are using these applications every day in our life. I'm sure many of us are using smartwatches, wearables, and n number of other things. So whenever there is a data and whenever there is a connectivity or transmission and reception of data, what comes into picture is cyber attack. And security is a major concern in IoT because suppose it is a patient monitoring system. Hello? Am I audible clearly, sir?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
You're audible.
Okay. So whenever it comes to accessing anybody's personal data, somebody's data can be hacked, somebody's privacy can be questioned, and there can be n number of other damages made. So data is crucial. Data is wealth in the I can say in the world of IoT. So that is why looking at the security aspects of IoT is major concern. Initially, we used to learn only the cybersecurity concepts in general for laptops, desktops, for the routine LAN or other networks. But now the same concepts are equally applicable for IoT. So that is the major thing why we are looking at these security related to IoT in today's session. So what are the objectives? Like when somebody says IoT security, so the security should be attended, the security should be achieved with respect to which all points related to IoT. So the first is identification. All the entities in an IoT system need to be able to identify other participants. Suppose there is a simple wireless sensor network, IoT application where there are hundreds of sensors involved. Then each sensor will obviously be having a unique ID, and there should be a unique identity of each of the sensor, each of the actuator, each of the server, each of the gateway, because all these things are providing some data, and to process that, to take the decision, their identity is important. Authentication and authorization. So all these things must be authenticated. Okay, because if somebody else is entering into some other sensor, adding some additional sensors, which is obviously not a part of network, then there can be a damage to the system. So the restricted resource should not be there. So before access to a restricted resource is allowed, all these things must be authenticated. Integrity refers to there is no change in the original data. Whatever is the reading sensed by one sensor, that should not be modified when it is getting transmitted over the network, because sensors, they gather the data and then they transmit data to the cloud. So those data or messages should not be changed, modified, altered, or destroyed. Either they can be modified completely, or they can be little bit altered, or even they can be destroyed. So the attackers, when they intercept the network, they do all these things. So security should be attained with respect to integrity as well. Confidentiality, again important, because if it is industry information, if it is patient information, or if it is any other application, the information should remain confidential. Otherwise, the attacker can blackmail the user, the organization, or the industry, and even even he can attempt to disclose this information in an unauthorized way on social media or any other such platforms. So confidentiality is another security objective. Privacy, as we all know, the data that is being collected, it must be appropriately handled, appropriately addressed, and it should be ensured that the privacy is maintained. One person should not be aware of the other's details. Availability is that system and the resources, the services, it should be available when required. Suppose one IoT application is designed to provide the service at some instant of time. At that time, that IoT application should be able to give us the correct results. Otherwise, it will be of no use. So at that specific point, it must be operational. If the attacker attacks the IoT network, then obviously that application will not work. So availability will be questioned. That is the meaning. And last is non-repudiation. So with the malicious intent, then the entity should not be able to hide its action. Usually when the attacker exploits the all those attempts, privileges, and insert the malicious code into the system, and then it hides the steps, okay, then there will not be any trace of it. So that is why non-repudiation is important. He should not be cleaning the track then there will not be any way to come back out of that attack. So when we say there are 4 different layers which are important in the IoT architecture, the cyber threats, or we can say cyber attacks, they are deployed at these particular IoT architecture layers. So this diagram shows us what are the possible cyber attacks at each of the layer. Starting from the perception layer, that is the physical layer, we can say, where the sensors, actuators, and other devices are present. You can see here temperature sensors, smoke detectors, ultrasonic sensors. So what are the attacks available, attacks encountered at this layer? Node capturing, fast data injection, and booting vulnerabilities. These are the possible attacks. At the transport layer, famous attacks like SQL injection and cross-site scripting. At the network layer, where the data is communicated, where we have the protocols and routers in the picture, the attacks like denial of service, distributed denial of service, access control, phishing, these are the possible attacks. And at the application layer, what is the affected domain? At the application layer, affected domain is the end user, the last user interface, which is the actual application of IoT. It can be blockchain, it can be any smart device, a wearable, smart vehicle, or whatever is the final entity, that is the application layer affected domain. So the attacks available are here: reprogramming, access control, data theft, and directly the service interruption. It won't be able to provide any kind of service. So let us look at these attacks a little bit in detail, because we should understand what actually happens under that attack. So I have classified here the security threats with respect to these layers. So let us look at the security threats to the sensing layer. The first is node capturing. When we have several nodes, then these low power nodes like which are the sensors or the actuators, they will be captured by the attacker and it will be replaced by another node from that attacker. So what will happen? The attacker will obviously gain control over the network and it will obviously compromise the security of entire IoT application. So that is called as node capturing. Second is malicious code injection attack. Here the attacker, he tries to inject the malicious code into the memory of the node. So what happens is, in whatever intended perfect way the node is supposed to perform or perform some kind of specific functions, it will not be able to do that. So what happens is, obviously the attacker will gain the access, the node will not function properly, and using such malicious code, the attackers may force the node to perform some unintended function. The first thing is, since the malicious code is inserted, the node will not do his routine activity, whatever it has to perform, or else it will do some unwanted, unintended function which it is not supposed to perform. So since the attacker will gain control, he can play with the node and he can get n number of things done through the node, because node is the major entity of the IoT network. Fast data injection. If the node is, once the node is captured, then attacker can do anything with the node. So the attacker may inject some erroneous data. What is the purpose of injecting this errorful data? The purpose is, obviously it will provide wrong results, and with these wrong outcomes, with these wrong readings, whatever is the decision made, whatever is the final output taken, obviously that will be wrong and it will result into malfunctioning of the IoT application. IoT application will not give you correct response. So here, fast data injection is much severe attack which is done at the sensing layer. Side channel attacks. Side channel attacks are basically, these are the security exploits that tries to extract some secret from the chip. So since these are the attacks at the physical layer, where actually the hardware devices, the sensors and the machines are there, the attacker tries to extract the informations and sensitive data from the chips directly. So that is called as a side channel attack. Evas dropping and interference, we all are aware of this. Here the attacker tries to capture the data when the data is getting transmitted over the network. Sleep deprivation attack, here the attacker tries to drain the battery of the low powered IoT edge devices. As we know, these sensors also, they face battery issues. Most of the applications of IoT now are facing these issues. So power consumption is a major constraint. Maintaining the battery levels, the operational levels of these IoT devices is a major constraint. If the batteries are dead, obviously the application is of no use. So what the attacker tries to do is they try to drain the battery of the IoT application so that the application itself starts either malfunctioning or it will not function itself. It won't give any results. It will be dead. So that is called as sleep deprivation attack. Now the next security threats to network layer. After sensor physical layer, which we call it as a perception layer, the second is a network layer. So what can happen at the network layer? The famous is phishing site attack. So phishing attack, most of us are aware of. So it can happen because of the phishing sites, when the users are visiting the web pages on the internet, and once the users credentials are compromised, obviously the attacker can run the application as per his own requirements, as per his own purpose. Okay, so we have heard of n number of scams even with the online banking, I guess, because there is hardly a very small change of a minute letter or some symbol, and we don't even, and the attacker prepares the website in such a way that we don't even come to know that this is a duplicate website. If we open the URL, suppose www.rediffmail.com, we are so used to that page that we just go to the username password box and then we put the credentials and we just log in. But it is very difficult for a person to identify the very minute changes done. And once we enter the credentials, those credentials will reach to the attacker and he will gain the access. So that is a simple example of phishing sites. Access attack, which is most of the times referred to as APT, advanced persistent threat. So here again, the unauthorized person gain access to the
Ma'am, you are muted, ma'am. Please unmute.
muting participants. I guess I got mute. Is it?
It's sorry, madam. I think it's some of the
Sorry, madam.
participants. are
Okay.
muted.
So you people were able to hear up to which slide, sir?
Just
now
it has
only-
happened just only 2 seconds ago.
Acha. Okay.
Please proceed.
Fine. Okay. So we are at the access attack slide, that is security threat to network layer. As I said, it is also called as advanced persistent threat. Here the attacker will get the entry in the network. It will remain in the network undetected and it will keep on monitoring the network all the time. Purpose can be, it can steal the valuable data. It can cause the damage to the network. It can capture the node. It can do some other malfunctioning in the network. So access attack is, again, I can say the severity is much more as compared to other attack, because the attacker is all the time staying in the network and he has got access to all the admin privileges even. Okay. For example, we can relate it to, you might have heard of keyloggers. You might have heard of attacks where the access to our laptop is taken by the attacker. So whatever we do with our laptop, whatever window we open, whatever website we open, whatever URL we type, whatever we do, whatever key we press with our keyboard, everything is getting tracked and it will reach automatically to the attacker. So that kind of attack, we can call it as a access attack, and that is the way we can relate it to IoT. Once the keyloggers are placed, whatever we type and do on our machines, everything will be traced. Another security threat is the famous denial of service and DDoS, that is distributed denial of service. So here the attacker floods the servers with large number of unwanted requests. Example can be, suppose our own email account, it receives suppose 2000 emails in the inbox. Obviously it will get hang. We will not be able to read any email, we will not be able to compose any email, and it will make us not to do anything, which is called as denial of service. It is supposed to provide us the service of sending emails and receiving emails, but it is not providing us the proper function, hence the name denial of service. So when such multiple sources are used by the attacker to flood the server, it is called as a distributed denial of service. So what is done is the attacker he gains access to suppose first 5 major systems on the network, and then through these 5 systems he will flood the remaining 100 or 500 systems in the network. So that can be thought of as a distributed denial of service attack. So whether it is DOS or DDoS, the penalty is huge because it will disrupt the service, first thing. Second thing, it will not allow anything to be done for the genuine users, and the users has to lose control over the service. Another important threat is data transit attack. So data transit attack is when the data is in the transit mode. Okay, initially the data will be stored in the local server or the cloud, but when your data is transferred from one location to another location, when it is available over the network, the chances of intercepting the network, the chances of attacking the network are 100%, because it is much more easy to intercept the network rather than getting the entry and exploiting the vulnerabilities at the cloud. So data which is in the transit mode is much more vulnerable in case of IoT applications. So data breach is the famous word we can say, or the attack which happens in the data transit mode. Selective forwarding, the attackers use malicious nodes to selectively block the delivery of messages. Suppose there are 100 systems in the network and it wants to capture suppose 50 out of that, then it will capture those 50, it will make them malicious, it will get an entry over those machines, and then it will block the delivery of important messages through those machines. Okay, we can say that suppose there are 100 servers, 100 sensors in the system. These 100 sensors are communicating to 5 important machines, and then if the attacker gain access to these 5 machines, which are supposed to interpret the data, which are supposed to take the data and process it, then obviously if the access is controlled for all those 5 machines, application will be of no use. In the network layer, which is called as sinkhole attack. So a sinkhole will be created in the network. When we say network, the meaning is we have lots of sensors and the gateway, and they are transmitting data to the cloud, and accordingly the application will run. Okay, so the way we say a wireless sensor network, same kind of network we can thought of as a IoT network. So it breaches the confidentiality obviously, and it will deny the service by dropping all the packets instead of forwarding them to the desired destination. So look at this diagram. This red colored node is a sinkhole node which is inserted there, and instead of forwarding the content received from S1, S2, S4, S5 and all these nodes, it will drop all those packets and nothing will reach further to the other nodes. So application entirely will go wrong. Hello flood attack and the Sable attack. Here also the malicious node will be inserted. It will act as a it will look like it has stolen the or duplicated the identity of the original node, and then it will lead to false information, because if the malicious node is inserted, that node can be made to transmit false information to all the neighboring sensor nodes. So that is called as the Sybil attack. At the middleware, the SQL injection and flooding attacks are most famous. In SQL injection, the details of any user can be withdrawn from the records. Not only details can be obtained, but details can be altered, modified, or even deleted, and that is called as a SQL injection attack. Flooding attack, we all are aware. It sends multiple requests for the service, and it will flood with hundreds, thousands of messages, so the application will not work. At the application layer, data theft, access control are again same, which we discussed earlier at the other layers. So though we implement authorization, authentication, etc., and which will work fine with the legitimate users, but if the attacker has obtained the access to the credentials itself, and if he gains the access to the entire network, then application won't run. So that is access control attack. Service interruption attack, again same thing, similar to denial of service or distributed denial of service. There will be interruption, illegal interruption obviously made to the service, and the service will malfunction or it won't function at all. Sniffing attacks, we all are aware of the packet sniffer tools. It works similarly here. The sniffer applications are available. They can monitor the network traffic. Some of the packets can be again dropped. They can be altered, or what kind of activity is going on can be traced for an IoT network. The important attack in application layer is a reprogram attack. Reprogram attack, again here I can say for application layer, the severity for reprogram attack is much more, because if the programming process itself is not protected, the attacker can easily reprogram the IoT network, reprogram the IoT object sitting remotely at another place, and it can make IoT application function the way he or she wants, the attacker wants. Okay, so it is similar to hijacking the entire network. So nothing can be done if the program itself is not correct, or if the application is completely reprogrammed. So that is the meaning of reprogram attack, which works at the application layer. So now, after looking at these security threats at all these layers, we can say that there are three main surface areas for the IoT cyber attacks. One is devices, obviously the memory, the sensors, the network services, etc. The communication channels, when the data is in the transit mode, at the network layer, etc. And the last is at the applications and at the software. So these are the three main attack services for IoT that we can conclude from all the different attacks we have discussed at all the layers. So now we cannot stop using IoT applications. We cannot stop progressing and developing n number of IoT applications because of these cyber threats. What we can do is we can protect the IoT ecosystem. So what are the measures to protect these IoT ecosystem? We can incorporate hardware security, because at the first layer, perception layer itself, if we protect the sensors, the machines, the devices, then the chances of getting them intercepted afterwards will be much more less. So hardware security is important. Network security by blocking the unauthorized IPs. Then we can have well-skilled developers and programmers who can identify the issues and can manage the system accordingly. If we can develop a thinking like an attacker, we can think of the points that can go wrong, and we can take care of that in advance, because the attackers are much more intelligent people. They are not like a layman, because if they can gain access to the network, obviously these attackers are nothing but the well-skilled developers. Okay, so we have to train the programmers, we have to train the internal team to work towards it. and think like attacker, so that in advance we can take precautions. Giving strong passwords or biometrics or cryptographic algorithms, that can be another important way. When it comes to setting the passwords, we all are used to set like xyz@123 or abc_123. So those passwords can be broken in 10 seconds, not even 10 seconds time. So there is one chart which shows you, depending upon the strength of your password, how much time it takes to crack that password. So it is mandatory nowadays to set the password which has got uppercase, lowercase symbols, special characters, and at least the strength should be minimum 8 to 9 characters. So we should have strong passwords. We can enable the biometric authentication for that with the help of whoever is the admin of the network, or we can have some better cryptographic algorithms which are difficult to break. We can make use of firewalls, obviously, between the connected devices. Data encryption, data isolation, network authentication, these things are nowadays very common, but the attackers are so smart that in spite of putting all these things also, they are trying to intercept the network. So developing the application and breaking the application, all these trends or advancements, I can say they are going hand in hand. They are two sides of the coin. We go for developments and the next day we come to know what are the vulnerabilities, or the attacker has done something to so and so system. So the more advanced we are going, the more advances are happening in cyber threat as well. So we have to ensure some security tips. So all data which is gathered, it must be stored and properly. It must be accounted for, because confidentiality, privacy of the user is important. Single piece of data circulated within the system should be mapped exactly. Each device connected to the network should be configured with security in mind. As I said, we should think like an attacker. We should visualize what can go wrong, and we should take care of it in advance. We should have strong username, passwords. We can have multi-factor authentication systems. In the organization must conduct several trainings and regular workshops for all the team members, because once the compromise is done, once the data breach happens, it is not that useful in gaining access again. Rather than that, we have to strive hard for not getting it happened. Okay, so that should be the security strategy for an organization. And each device should be physically secured, because whatever sensors, actuators, machines, or hardware devices, or the processors, controllers we have, they don't have any of the safeguard on their own. They just have a hardware for providing or doing that particular function. For example, sensor sense the data, controller process the data, but there is no specific security device inbuilt into them. So that is why the hardware devices should be first physically secured, and then at the software side or at the network side, we can think of the security. So here we come at the end of the session. There are, as I said, it is a vast domain. There are hundreds of other things which can be covered, might be some other later time. But these are the key terms that I can say for those who are who wish to work in the domain, maybe for their projects, for their research, or just as a part of subject interest. So implementing IoT security with the help of fog computing, blockchain, edge computing, machine learning is a trend nowadays. Then developing the temper-resistant hardware security modules is also the major research domain, because as I said, there is no inbuilt security in any of the hardware modules available. So if the hardware itself has got the security module, it will definitely lead to better secure IoT network. So IoT is basically developed to stay connected. So I would like to say here, stay connected and at the same time, stay safe. Whatever applications you develop, let us ensure the safety of it. Unless they are safe, they won't be meaningful. So thank you here. I have completed my discussion. These are my contact details if anybody would like to discuss this topic further. By 2025, the number of IoT devices which will be connected will be in minimum 80 billions. So IoT applications are increasing day by day, minute by minute, I can say. So cyber threat and the corrective measures to IoT security is crucial, and the recent trend, and it will be a trend for many more years. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Really saying you arranged a feast after post lunch, ma'am. Really
The
used.
topic is too vast, sir, and since there is 1 hour, it is difficult to accommodate
Can I-
everything.
Yes, because
Excuse me, sir.
in
Can
the,
I ask you a question?
We have
Sure,
just
sir,
touched
sure.
the topic. I'm trying to turn on my camera, but it's not getting on. I don't know.
Ma'am, can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure, sir.
Yes, ma'am. As IoT security is a little bit difficulty concept for us to understand. So,
Okay.
if I am using a communication protocol like RPL, which is a routing protocol for low power and lossy networks. Yes, ma'am. Is there any alternative? Why? Because of this RPL is standardized in 2012 only. But if any other protocol which can be like comparison with RPL, can I use any other protocols?
For IoT, there are specified customized protocols.
Yes, ma'am.
But it again depends on application. Here, the application range is so different. The requirements are different that we cannot say that in a generalized way that this protocol will be useful in.
Yes, ma'am. But
these
if
things.
MQTT
is there, then COAP is there, then many are there.
Yes, ma'am. But if you are considering this,
Sorry, your voice is breaking.
yes, ma'am. But I'm considering. Yes, ma'am. But if I'm concentrating for the smart city application environment, then RPL is the best one. Why? Because of for low-end communication, and we have a communication between the devices for a short range.
Yes. So rather than changing the protocol, I would say you increase the security level, because if with the same protocol, if you can get better security, that will be your additional contribution. Because changing the protocol will be just look like a trial and error method.
But as far as I'm considering. Okay, ma'am. So, ma'am, is there any other kind of simulation tools to implement this RPL with the security issues like a rank attack and version number attacks?
No, sir. I'm not aware of the simulation tools. Sorry.
It's okay, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Let me know the feedback so that I can add those points in the presentation later on, which will be useful for me as well.
Yes, ma'am. Really, you made this presentation point by point and level by level. Really, you gave, if any of our participants has not started their research, definitely they will find this IoT as their domain. If at all they started, you gave the route map in what way they need to focus. That means you focused everything like what are the characteristics of IoT and what is the architecture and where are the security issues that there. And you already mentioned this IoT is applications are going to become minute to minute change. So that much of a reputation and that much of broad area they can have to work on this now. Really, thank you so much for giving that sort of awareness for all our participants.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Dr. Mansi, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. See you again.
Again, definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a nice day.
Yeah. Stay, sir. Thank you.